This is just going to be kind of a fill-in class. Usually, I only go 5 or 6 nights. This is about the 7th. But we did have a lot of discussion during some of the classes, and I think they drug out a little bit. And besides, I never conduct the same classes just alike anyway. I hope to think that I learn something as I teach, and therefore you can impart it to the next class, and then you learn something in that class, and you impart it onto the next group. I know I don't see the younger boys that are usually here, and I know a couple of those boys wanted me to stress a lot on herbs. Well, I'm not glad that they're not here, but since they're not here, I won't go into much detail on herbs because I don't think you really have to. Up in New York one time, I had a friend who I went to his house, the first time I ever went to his house. Well, he brought me into the kitchen, and he had this great big kitchen cabinet there, and he opened up these 2 big double doors, and he says, "Look at this." And I looked in there, and he had mostly pint jars. He had some quart jars, and he had 122 different jars full of herbs. In other words, he had 122 different herbs. And actually, he was kind of proud of the fact that he could identify them all by name, and a lot of them he could identify out in the woods or in the vegetable garden and so forth. And not only that, but he claimed that he knew what each herb was good for. Well, I was quite impressed at that time. That was about 7, 8 years ago. But the more I studied into herbs and the more I got to using the different herbs, I discovered that it's like a color chart. You know, there's just about 7 really basic colors. And say you've got a color chart of different blues. You know, you got green-blue, and then you got blue-green. And then you've got light blue and light blue and sky blue and pale blue, and pretty soon all the blues just kind of fade together, and you have to take them out in the bright sunlight, and then you still can't tell the different color chips. That some of them look just identically alike. And that's the way it is with a lot of your herbs. A lot of them are just twin cousins. And what A herb does, B herb does exactly the same. And maybe A, B, C, D, E herb, they all do the same thing. And basically, of course, our principles in treating is, and can any of you recall exactly what are the 2 causes of disease?
Impure blood.
Impure blood. And by the way, this will all be on a little chart I'm going to give you tonight in detail. Impure blood and imperfect circulation. Okay, so in the herb field, the only really ones I'm interested in are those that purify blood. I won't write the blood out there. Purify. All right, I'll put purify blood. And on the other side, now this will fool you. Let me explain this. And the nervines. Can you think of what a nervine would be?
It's peppermint.
Well, I mean what it does. Relaxes the nerves. And if you relax the nerve, you in turn, of course, relax the muscles. And what relaxes the muscles also relaxes the wall of the blood vessels and the capillaries. So the blood vessels and the capillaries, they relax. And when they relax, what happens to them? Do they contract or do they dilate? They constrict or they dilate when a blood vessel relaxes? Well, naturally, it relaxes, it dilates. And therefore, if a blood vessel or a capillary dilates, you get better circulation through it. So, since we're interested in purifying the blood, we stick with the herbs that purify the blood. And since we're interested in perfecting the circulation, in other words, opening up the circulation, getting the blood to all parts of the body, into the arms, the feet, the legs, and so forth, then we're interested in some nervines, which will relax the nerves, which in turn relaxes muscle, which in turn relaxes the veins and the capillaries. So therefore, you only need maybe, well, I used to have about 6 or 8 of them, but I find that just confuses people, and basically there's, well, I suppose there's strong nervines and there's mild nervines, and we'll just list a few of them here. Let's start with blood purifiers first, since it's closer to me over here. I think one of the best blood purifiers is the one mentioned in the Bible. Can you think where that is?
Hyssop?
Yeah, Psalms 51, verse 6. Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Hyssop is good. It doesn't have the best flavor in the world. But I'll show you how to disguise that a little bit here. Hyssop is a good one. One that Ellen White recommended was, and something you have plentifully here in Michigan, is a red clover, the one you find growing along the road. Now, I wouldn't necessarily pick those growing right along the road because they got so much carbon monoxide and fumes and everything else on them, plus chemical sprays maybe from the machines that go up and down the highway, killing the weeds off.
Lots of sodium chloride.
Chloride, yeah, I'd get back in the woods or an open field somewhere. Get in an open field and pick you this summer, pick some red clover blossoms, preferably the first crop of clover blossoms. Just pick them off and put them in racks up in an attic, or put them in racks somewhere in a breezy garage, or maybe just out in the sun every day or something, but dry them anyway. Dry them, and then you can just preserve them for months, even years. Red clover, and that's usually the blossom. Okay, then another good one is St. John's wort. I don't know about that, whether that grows around here locally or not.
Is that a good flavor?
That's the St. John's wort. Well, it's better than hyssop, but that's not saying a whole lot. It's not that great neither. Red clover blossom really isn't too bad. That might be the one you'd really want to go with. St. John's wort. By the way, on the 6-day cleansing program, we just stick with number 1 and 2 here, and that's all that's really necessary.
What about sassafras?
Well, sassafras, that's more of a spring tonic. The Indians used to go for that. And I'll tell you now, this is real truthful. When I lived up in New York at the foothill of the Adirondacks Mountains, I used to have excess on the north slope in the hardwood forest there, in the maple forest. I had access to ginseng plants and ginseng root. I used to love to see in the fall that ginseng plant there, that little red berry. It looks like a great big overgrown raspberry right there growing up between the leaves. And I used to get the roots and dry them and put one in my pocket and chew the whole root, one every day. But I really tried to give it a fair trial week after week, but I finally came to the conclusion that ginseng really didn't do anything for me. And the sassafras root, or sarsaparilla root, did just as much. It just had enough little stimulant in it or something that really give that pick you up, like a spring tonic.
One of the guys at the shop was telling me the other night that his wife had poison ivy, and she had it for a long time. It wouldn't clear up. Everything she did, it didn't do any good. Finally, I don't know whether this Indian was supposed to be a medical man or what, but he looked at her and she told him what was wrong. You got bad blood, drink sassafras tea. And she drank the sassafras tea, a cup of it a day, and cleared right up.
Yeah, but actually that could be somewhat a blood purifier. Also, it could be a little bit of a stimulant since it's a spring tonic, and that would tend to stimulate your eliminating organs of your body. Not only the eliminating organs like the kidneys, but it would stimulate possibly the lymph system to get out there and send those white blood cells and leukocytes around to pick up that debris, which that's all a rash is, or poison ivy. I mean, it's an infection like skin infection. And also it might stimulate your liver to detoxify a lot of the poisonous substance which is being introduced by the reaction of the poison ivy, right. Okay, now actually you can have even another one here.
Comfrey.
Comfrey. No, actually comfrey is more, if you have a bad raw skin irritation or something, yeah, you'd use comfrey more like you'd use aloe vera plant, the aloe vera leaf or the aloe vera gel. In the humans, this is real fascinating. We had a man down at Oak Haven about 3 years ago who had just come back from New Zealand from the mission field, and I guess he passed up the treatment out at Loma Linda, or I should say in one of the big hospitals out west. But anyway, and for one reason or another, I guess he just was a firm believer in natural treatments, but he didn't know what to do for himself. And he was about 71 years old. And they practically drug him in. I mean, they carried him one under each arm, and kind of dragged his foot along because it had eaten so much into the calf of his leg that you could just see the striations of the muscle. And so we began to treat him. We gave him hot and cold leg soaks 3 times a day. We put a sun lamp on it twice a day, morning and night. And one of the things we did every night before we went to bed, we'd get these fresh comfrey leaves right out of the garden, just these big broad leaves, and we take and put them in a bowl and just mash them up. Just make a soupy, slimy mess out of them, and just pack that right against that wounded area. And then wrap it up. We put a wet gauze around it, and then saran wrap, and then another towel, and then you go to bed. And the next morning you get up. Well, after about 10 days, that raw, oozing, kind of bleeding, weeping wound there, it was just dug right into the muscle, just skinned right over, and it had this little delicate pink skin, just like a baby's skin, and it just skinned right over like that. Now, what fascinated me with that case was that afterwards I took a comfrey leaf and I looked at it under a high-powered magnifying lens, and it's real fascinating because a comfrey leaf has the little pores all over it, just like the back of your hand. It has all the pores over the leaf. And then out of those pores grows these little hair-like projections, just like the hair growing out of the pores on your skin. And then if you ever looked on your skin, you could see little lines running between the pores. Well, on the comfrey leaf, you also have those little lines running between the pores. And they're raised, too. That makes the little segments between the pores kind of raised, you know. And it looks exactly like a human skin, except it's green, of course. Your skin is either white or dark brown or some other color. And then I read that there is a substance in the human skin called anatrophen, I believe is the word. Now, don't hold me to that word, but I think it was anatrophen. But the same substance is found in the comfrey leaf, and it's found nowhere else. The comfrey leaf and the human skin both have this substance called anatrophen, or anatrophen. Anatrophen or anatrophen, I can't recall. I didn't look it up here lately. But, so it must be that substance that really has an affinity toward the skin. I mean, it really has an attraction because it's made somewhat out of the same substance. So, of course, we know it's made by the same creator. That's what we like to stress. Okay, let's see. I'm just trying to think of another one that might be real good. Bloodroot is good, but let's see. Well, that's all right. We could put down bloodroot. Oh, wait a minute. Let's for a fourth one here, so we don't get too many of them. Here's a real good one. In fact, this is probably the strongest of all of them. Golden seal. But if you make a tea out of golden seal and drink it, you got to hold your nose and swallow fast, because it is just as bitter as gall.
Is that made from what is called gold thread that you
No.
find in the swamps?
No, all right. Now, gold thread, we can put that underneath it. If you know where gold thread is, that's a poor man's golden seal, because golden seal will run you about, well, I could get it for $12 a pound. But golden thread you could probably get for $3 or $4 a pound. And, of course, if you go out and pick it, golden thread, you're going to have to pick for a long time, because
that's so fine.
those little threads. But if you ever notice, they're golden. They're just like miniature little golden seal roots. And they have the same bitterness, too.
Grows in swamps.
Yeah, and they have the same bitterness, and they're just identical. And I think they'd be just as good as golden seal. We just put down there, golden thread. Yeah, we used to get those in New York, but you have to get an awful lot of them to get anything. That's a poor man's golden seal, and they're both real good. But you see, after you get that many, why, that's all you need anyway. I mean, how many blood purifiers you need? But for golden seal, it's usually best just to grind it up into a powder form and put it in a capsule, gelatin capsule. I usually like to use single zeros, but that's the biggest you get. And that's a pretty good one. Some people call it a horse capsule. It'd be about similar to that piece of chalk, at least that big. So if you don't like it that big, then just get a single zero. And then the next smaller size is a 1. Smaller yet is a 2, 3, 4. You might want to... And you might want a single zero.
What they're made out of.
Yeah.
Well, that's too. I guess it might have a little animal hoof or horn in it or something. I don't know. You can get the degelatinized ones or the unanimalized ones. You pay quite a bit though. Okay, the nervines, of course, relaxed. And I think it was in class number 2 we covered some nervines as far as the best one for sleep. Remember the best one for sleep? Hops. Another good one for nerves or sleep is catnip.
Yeah, one of the boys said he took hops at night and gave him nightmares.
Huh?
One of the boys said he took hops at night.
No, I don't think. I think he had something. I
Maybe
think
he had something with the hops.
he should have done it 2 or 3 nights in a row, really, because hops will relax you. You know, the more you relax and the deeper you sleep, you don't dream. If you really sleep deep, you don't dream. It's when you start to wake up and get into that twilight zone. Here's where you dream. But in a deep sleep, you won't dream. I mean, this is scientifically proven.
Well, I must not sleep very deep any time.
No. But if you drank very much hops, it would put you so soundly asleep, I guarantee you wouldn't dream. You probably ate a big meal, too,
That's what I wondered.
and probably had a half-digested meal in his stomach, and his stomach is working half the night, and as the stomach works, the rest of your organs and body sympathize, and you toss and turn. And it counteracts the effect of the hop.
Ed, I gotta ask you something then about that, because when I'm really, really hungry, I cannot sleep and I keep waking up and waking up and waking up. But if I have had not a huge meal before I go to bed, but I mean, if I've eaten so that I'm not starving to death by the time I go to bed, I'll sleep good all night. But if I'm really hungry, I won't. I'll wake up and wake up and wake up. So it would,
Do you eat the third meal?
at 4 o'clock.
That's pretty, I don't know. Third meal at 4 o'clock. When do you start the first one? About 5 in the morning? And
Just about.
you'd be better off having that third meal about 6. A couple of pieces of different kinds of fruit and swieback. I wouldn't eat a third light meal at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
When I eat at 4 o'clock, fine, but if I didn't, like if I quit eating at 1, and I was really hungry before I went to bed, or the days that I fasted, I didn't sleep hardly at all.
No, we see you're supposed to have consistency too in your schedule.
Right.
Consistent schedule. In other words, if
Right,
you're going to
like
eat at
I was
4, eat at 4 every day.
We do,
Don't.
but
Yeah.
I mean, when I was on the cleansing.
Yeah. Well, that's
when I was fasting.
that's the body in rebellion because you've broken up its schedule. Sure. Down here you've got 2 strong ones. I'll put two of the strongest ones right here at the bottom. I'll put strong, strong. That's vervain and valerian. That's the 2 V's.
That's right.
Valer. Is it?
Yeah.
Valer. I-N.
Well, what would you want a stimulant for?
What's a stimulant?
I was just wondering, on some of those tea boxes downstairs, they say
Yeah,
stimulant.
it says stimulant. The reason it is because take valerian and vervain. It so relaxes you and so opens up your veins and capillaries that you just get blood flowing just perfectly throughout your system. And this gives you a feeling of well-being. Anytime you've got blood flowing
So
through
those
it.
are stimulants?
They're stimulants, but yet, because of the good circulation, you can just relax easy because you're not uptight, you're not tense.
So that would be called a stimulant?
It's a stimulant, yes, but it's a relaxant too. It's like, milk is an alkaline, but it changes to an acid in your stomach.
Well, it
No, an
says
orange, same way as an
water.
orange. Orange is acid, but it changes, but
Yeah.
when you eat it, it's an alkaline.
Yeah.
When you drink the tea, it's a nervine or relaxant, yet it's a stimulant in effect. It's like if you get so tired that you can't go to sleep. That's because you're all tired and fatigued and your nerves are all on edge and you're uptight, really. You can't relax. As soon as you relax, why, you just go right to sleep. And you can relax so much yet have a sense of well-being drinking relaxant tea. It's kind of a paradox, I guess they call the situation. Vervain and valerian, no, that's real strong. In fact, if you took vervain and valerian, well, I'll tell you what happened. One time we had a man that had cancer, and he wanted to go all natural treatments. I guess I mentioned this in one other class. So he wanted to go off his morphine, grains of 6. Now, morphine, grains of 6 every 3 hours is just about as strong a dose as you want to give a man. And he was on morphine, MS the 6th, every 3 hours. And so he wanted to go off his morphine, so naturally that's the best thing because his morphine was paralyzing his liver, it was paralyzing his kidneys and so forth, everything in his body. And so took him off the MS, morphine, and gave him these 4 right here, ground up in a capsule, equal parts of those 4. And we just ground them into a powder and put them in these big double-out capsules and gave him about 3 capsules
What for, Ed, would you
for
say?
pain. He had a lot of chest, a lot of...
Would you say what
These 4 are catnip, skullcap, vervain, and valerian. And we gave him 3 capsules. It was about every 2 to 3 hours to begin with, but it so well took care of his pain after about 4 or 5 hours. I mean, it just subsided right down. That we started stringing him out. We even got down to 2 capsules about every 3 to 4 hours. And he did have pain. Somehow he had pain down his knee a lot, and we just the capsules didn't seem to do that, so we gave him fomentations, hot and cold fomentations. And after about the second set of fomentations that evening, we gave him fomentations about 5 and again about 8 o'clock at night, then no more pain in the knee. I don't know whether he had a spasm or a locked joint there, or just what was causing the pain, but fomentations got rid of the pain in the right knee. So basically, like I say, that's almost in descending order as far as the strength goes. Hop is fairly strong. Catnip is about a medium strength. Skullcap is getting pretty strong, and then vervain and valerian are quite strong as far as nervines go. And I can see now looking at this word valerian, that should be an E here after the L. V-A-L-E-R-I-A-N, valerian. Now there is one excellent nervine that I don't have written up there, and it should be in everybody's cabinet. It's excellent for just a mild sedative to go to sleep. It's excellent if you've got an upset stomach. It's excellent flavored, and it's called, it ends in M-I-T.
Mint.
Mint, and what would it be?
Peppermint.
Peppermint. But any mint tea, spearmint, peppermint. Is there any others that end in mint? You can think of another one ending in mint.
Winter mint.
Winter mint?
Wintergreen.
That's wintergreen. Well, anyway, any tea you see that ends in mint, you can be pretty sure it's related to peppermint or spearmint, and it's a nervine. And it's excellent for just mild relaxation.
Now, would that be good to take that right from the peppermint plant?
Well, the herb plant, you
Yeah.
mean? Yeah, it's
They
usually.
raise all kinds of it just east of us here.
I don't know. I've always dealt with the dry myself, and
Well, I mean, you could take it to dry it.
yeah, I'd make a plant. That's it, sure. And but I've told you also about the peppermint extract you buy in the grocery store. You know, if you get a cut or something on your hand, just pour some of that on there. It'll cleanse it because it's about 65% alcohol. And the peppermint extract is concentrated extract. It's so concentrated that it must, when you put it on that cut, it must just open up all those little capillaries, just dilate them completely. And where you have perfect circulation, you don't have any pain. So if you put a gauze around that and keep that gauze saturated with peppermint, you won't never have any pain. I don't care how deep or wicked the cut is. It just won't pain. I know I've had personal experience on my own hand with that. And then if you ever have a sore throat, you can get rid of a sore throat in about 3 seconds or 5 seconds. Just take a half a teaspoon of that extract of peppermint, or essence of peppermint. Some of it's labeled different ways. But it's in the grocery stores there, where they've got the vanillas and the flavorings. Just get that extract of peppermint and put about a half a teaspoon, or if you want to put the whole teaspoon in a glass of warm water, 8-ounce glass. Of course, a whole teaspoon makes it pretty strong. But if you put, you better start with a half a teaspoon. Put it in there and stir it up and gargle. Just gargle as deep down as you can. 8-ounce glass of warm water. And the last mouthful or two, maybe the last 2 mouthfuls, swallow it. It's not going to hurt you. And you'll ask yourself, where'd my sore throat go?
I can tell you something else.
Of course, that's treating the symptom again. You got to get down and relieve that sore throat. Get in a hot sweat and circulation bath, or put one of those cold fomentation claws around your neck. And I think we've gone into that in another class. But peppermint's real good. So now you could, for instance, if you want to stimulate your kidneys, corn silk does a pretty good job. But a fomentation to the kidneys does a much better job, providing you're drinking sufficient amounts of water.
It is squaw weed.
Okay.
The same as squaw vine.
Squaw weed, I think, is just a common name for squaw vine. There's 2 more that I should mention, although I don't know why any of the men would want to know unless their wives were going to have babies. But squaw vine, that comes from the true story about the Indians back at the turn of the century and back in the 19th century. All the squaw women, of course, who were going to have a child went on squaw vine about the 5th month that they're carrying the child. And they claimed they had completely painless childbirths. And I know the few modern day women who have gone on squaw vine and raspberry root, or raspberry leaf I should say, have very, very little pain at childbirth. Now I don't know, the squaw vine must have something to do with the nerves and the relaxation of the uterus. And the raspberry also must be some type of a nervine. It has something to do with the relaxation of the muscles and the nerves, particularly in the organs there, the reproductive organs. And this is why that just opens up with so little pain. So that's 2. And then, of course, some people say, well, mullein leaf is good for sinus problems. But in using it, I've never found it to be really that effective. I mean, even a strong dose. I suppose someone else might suggest some other herb that they've heard about.
This squaw vine, is that vine that when you find it where wintergreen grow, and it
Well,
very looks like wintergreen?
To be honest with you, the only squaw vine I've seen and the ones I've used have been in boxes or bags.
You haven't seen it in the
I haven't seen it
woods?
in a while. No, I'm rather weak when it comes to going out and identifying. Oh, I can identify mullein and catnip and red clover, of course, and golden seal, and some of the real common ones.
Where do you find golden seal?
Golden seal, you'd have to go down in the Ohio River Valley, either on the Ohio-Indiana side of the Ohio River or on the northern Kentucky side. And golden seal would almost fool you with ginseng. It looks very much like ginseng, except it doesn't have the red berries.
I've seen ginseng, but I wouldn't be able to identify it.
Ginseng, yeah, it's got the three pronged leaves, the three big leaves at the top, and the leaves all join on the stem at the same identical place on the stem. It's got the little red raspberry sticking out in the middle. It's quite characteristic, and golden seal looks quite a bit like it, really. Well, actually, that's quite a bit on herbs. That's as much as I'd ever go into it, even personally using it. I say that and then something will come to my mind here, but I just can't think of anything. If anyone's got any suggestions or got any herbs in mind, like I say, ginseng, I'm convinced that ginseng is the most overrated thing in the health food industry today.
Overpriced.
Yeah, well, it's overpriced. It's
Hyssop, does that grow locally too?
hyssop. No, I don't. Well, I think it could probably. I don't know. It might need quite a long growing season, because I think you could grow hyssop down south, but I don't know if you could grow it up north. Really.
Well, I was just wondering where the stuff comes from.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's just like ginseng. That's commercially grown now, and the golden seal, they grow that commercially, but it wasn't always that way. Okay. You know, we went into fermentations one night, and Arthur gave a real good demonstration on how to wring them out by hand. Well, I guess he showed that roaster too. You know, these roasters, these Westinghouse roasters that you put the turkey in. Why, if you fill the bottom up with about 2 inches of water and have that rack in there with a piece of tin on the rack, you can set your fermentation claws. So do we have that towel here?
Oh, underneath my,
Oh, in the blanket, sorry.
see what my fermentation closet is under my towel.
Oh, yeah. So the fermentation pad, it could even be a towel like this. You just get it real damp and stick it in that roaster, of course, and turn the roaster up to 350 and let it warm up for about 20 minutes or so. And when they get good and hot, you just pull them out of the roaster and slap them right on your liver, or you put them on your chest. Of course, the towel doesn't quite hold heat for the whole 3 minutes it's supposed to be on there. And of course, you know it's supposed to be on for 3 minutes. And then you take it off real quickly and put ice on there, or snow, or some cold cloth.
He knows about it.
Yeah, rub that on there for at least 45 seconds, and then just dry off the moisture real quickly and slap another hot one on there for 3. Then ice for about 30 or 40 seconds, maybe 45 seconds, then slap another hot one on for the third application, and then finish off with ice or snow or cold water for about maybe 20 seconds on the third time. You always have your feet in hot water, or have a hot pad or something around your feet, and have ice to your head. Heat to your feet and ice to your head.
What if your patient never sweats?
Well, that's because they're really clogged up, or they're not drinking enough. They must be dehydrated, or their skin. Or their
That's the
skin.
same principle then as they use some of these trainers for football teams,
Oh yeah,
alternating hot and cold.
right. And they use it for baseball pitchers' arms, because that hot and cold, that gets a good circulation going there. We covered that one night, but do you have those hydrotherapy books? You ought to carry some of those hydrotherapy books, and they're really good, and some of them are real simple to follow. And it's just so great. I mean, if you've got bursitis or a pain in your shoulder, just put that hot on there for about 3 minutes. And this begins to dilate your capillaries and your veins and gets a good circulation. Then when you slap that cold on there, ice cold or ice itself on there for about 45 seconds, why, it even makes the veins open up even more, because it's a defense mechanism. All of a sudden when that cold hits it, the blood just almost like little soldiers, they say, let's get up there quick, there's cold, let's fight it off. And of course it goes up there, but if you keep the cold on too long, then it drives the blood back away, and it begins to constrict your capillaries and your veins, just like that window flies open. You're not going to just sit there, you're going to rush to the window, even though it's bitter cold out there, to try to close it and close off the cold. Same way for your blood. It rushes up there when that cold hits it, but you can't leave it on there too long. Then you got to get your heat back on there, because you can only fool the body so long with the cold. But you can really dilate the capillaries and the blood vessels and really get the circulation going. It takes the pain right away. Wherever you have pain in your body, you've got poor circulation. So get the circulation restored and you won't have any pain.
When you're doing it to like one local area, water yet.
Yeah.
Do you have to still have your feet in hot water, or can you?
You should, because what you do to your feet affects all through your body, you know. And if you get your feet good and warm and hot, they open up and they relax, so to speak. You relax your feet. Well, the nerves traveling up your legs, it just relaxes your whole body all over. So it's good, really, because you're kind of fighting against the grain to be all tensed up and try to get fomentations, and maybe you got too much blood congested in that area anyway. And it's just good to relax the body all over. Now, remember Arthur, then after he showed you that fomentations in the turkey roaster, or Westinghouse roaster, I think he used a pan there, a big pan of hot water, and he dipped these towels in. You remember he grabbed it by the end like this, and he passed them across to each other, kept passing them back and forth, so that the towel, when you held it out, it looked like it was all wadded up here, all twisted up, and then he dipped that center of the towel down to hot water, got it all real hot, then picked it up and started passing it from left hand to right hand, left hand to right hand. And then he pulled it real taut and squeezed out the water. Of course, then you've got to go ahead and smooth your towel out into a pad like again and fold it real quick. In the meantime, you're losing heat. And then you wrap it up in another towel and you're all ready to put the hot application on there. It's really best to have your fomentations, not towels, but an old blanket or something. If you could find a blanket that's half wool and half cotton, it's pretty ideal. You don't want it all wool, because wool just doesn't hold enough moisture to retain enough heat to begin with. So it should be about half cotton and half wool. If you can find an old blanket, maybe an old army blanket that's half wool and half cotton. And tear it up about 30 by 20 or something.
These old horse blankets.
Horse blankets, maybe tear it up 30 by 20, about the size of a big bath towel, and then fold it into whatever size you want. For instance, you're going to give fomentations to the chest. We'll just fold something up about the size of the chest. And, all right, say this was that piece of blanket, half wool and half cotton. I'll demonstrate. Last night down in Oak Haven, well, actually the Saturday night before, we were giving a demonstration on hydrotherapy, fomentations, by using the dipping hot water method and wringing them out, which is kind of an awkward method. And someone said, well, I have a better way of doing it. My wife used to do it this way. And actually it's Dr. Johnson. And then someone else says, well, I do it real good with a pie tin in a big pressure cooker. And someone else said, well, I do it this way. I said, hold it, wait a minute. I said, y'all come back next week with your little pet ways of doing it, and we'll just have a smorgasbord of hydrotherapy preparations, how to prepare your hydrotherapy pads. So they all came last night. And the first one was Dr. Johnson. He bought this old can, it's an old strawberry can. And his wife, who died a couple years ago, she used to go around the community giving a lot of fomentations to sick people, people with congestion of the chest, you know. And there's nothing that will relieve congestion of the chest quicker than a good fomentation, hot and cold fomentation. So all this is, it's just a lard can. And then she took some 1/4-inch chicken mesh wire, that might even be 1/8, no, it's about a 1/4-inch chicken mesh wire, and cut it round so that it could slide and fit right down into the lard can. But of course she put these four little 1 by 1 by 4-inch long legs under that mesh. It looks like a wire mesh coffee table, round coffee table, with these little miniature legs on it. And so you just set it right down the lard can. The legs, of course, set on the bottom of the lard can, and your wire mesh then is about 4 inches above the bottom of the lard can. And what you do, you put about 2 inches of water in the lard can and set it over a hot plate or even a flame, open flame. Of course, your water begins to boil, and naturally steam's coming up in there. So what you do, you take your fomentation pad. This is a nice one here, and Pat can demonstrate. She can show you how to make fomentation pads if you want to make some at home. I won't go into that since I don't sew anyway. But you could fold that just about in half. Now that makes it, what, about 15 by 10 inches when it's folded in half. That's just about a nice size for the chest. And then just take and wet it down. Don't get it dripping wet, but just get it good and moist. And or maybe fold it or roll it. We could even roll it. I think roll would be better. Then you could just stick it. Yeah, it would fit right down in there. Fit right in the can. And it's moist, remember, when you put it in a can, and you've got steam rising up in the can anyway, hot steam. You just put the lid on that, and 5 minutes later, that fomentation pad will be just steaming hot.
Is there a Yeah, 2 or 3 of them in there at once.
Yeah, well, that's it. You can put all 3 of them in there. See, there's 3 applications. First one, then the cold. Second one, then the cold. Third one, then you finish off with the cold. Of course, another good thing is, too, when you're giving someone fomentations to the chest, where should you have a hot fomentation pad if they're laying down?
On the back.
On their back. Have one straight up their back. And that draws a lot of the congestion out of the chest area toward their back, toward the surface of the
You
skin.
just use the one.
Just use the one on the back, right. Just have them lay on it. And then after you get all done with the chest, finish off the back with a little ice. Because as they lay on that, when they hold the heat in anyway, their body sandwiches the heat between the table and their back, so you really wouldn't have to change it each time like you do on the chest. Now, of course, when you take it out of that thing, this pad here, it'd be steaming hot. Have a blanket all laid out. I don't have a card in this room here, but be all laid out like this. And then you just take that pad, which we're going to use, fold it in half, since that folded in half makes just about the chest size. Just lay it there and real quickly fold it over like that, and there it's all set to put right on the chest. Now you can put it directly on someone's chest, but if it's really steaming hot, you may have to have another towel across their chest and then put this on it. And then put another towel over the top of this pad here. That would hold the heat in better. And like I said, you got to get a hold of some of those real simple hydrotherapy books from Eden Valley. And someone, do you have a few of those? Well, good. And, this gentleman here, I think, would appreciate it. I'm sorry, I forgot your name from last week.
Gaunt Miller.
Scott?
Gaunt.
Gott would probably appreciate one of those. They're real simple to follow. Oh, mine? I don't know. I'm in chapter 4. I've got 10 chapters, and I've kind of got stymied on chapter 4. It's all in my head, but I have trouble getting it down on paper, time-wise. Yeah, I need to get my leg hurt again, laid up in bed for 3 days, and I can do another 4 chapters. But anyway, so that's one good way. Now, Sister Morrow, she had a good way too. She had a canning. What do they call these? Canning cans? Canning cans or something. Yeah, they're about 15, 16 inches in diameter, maybe 18 inches in diameter, and some of them get to be about 2 feet high. And she just takes. Now this one here is about 15 inches in diameter, maybe 13 or 14 inches high, and then she takes just a pan of some kind, a pan maybe 6 inches in diameter and about 3 or 4 inches deep, and turns it upside down in the bottom of the canning pan. That means that you can fill that pan with hot water no higher than this little pan that's inside of it. Pan 6 inches deep, so you wouldn't want water more than 4 or 5 inches deep, because as it boils, it kind of sloshes around. Then you take this metal pie tin, this is what, about a 10-inch pie tin, and put that right down on top of the little pan in the bottom, and that gives it kind of a base there. It makes a little floor above about 5 or 6 inches above the floor of the canner. Now you got the idea where we're going to put the pads? You're going to take and lay your pad. Remember, the pad now has to be moist. You moisten it good, and then you can fold it or roll it, I suppose.
That's good, Ed, because we were using that rack, and our problem was that our
They
pads
dip down.
and got too wet, and when they're too wet, you
Alright.
cannot use those because you'll burn application.
Okay, just use it this way. And it reminds you, too, when this pad is dry, but when it's wet, or not sopping wet or dripping wet, but when it's damp, it folds easier. You can fold that in the quarters like that. And just lay it right down there on top of that pie tin. You see it's off the floor of the canning pan about 5 or 6 inches. You only want 3 or 4 inches in the bottom of water anyway.
Just be careful, it doesn't blow dry.
So then put your lid on it, and 5, 6, 7 minutes later, you got a nice steaming one, or 3 or 4 of them. And that's a good way. It's much easier this way than wringing them out, really. I don't think I'll ever teach the wringing out way again, because I didn't bring this equipment along. This was here in Pat's house, and most houses have this kind of equipment.
And those pads can be made with blankets, wool and cotton blankets or old army blankets, and get cotton bed pads. Cotton, they can't be a synthetic, bed pads if you can find them, and put in between the wool. That's what those are made of, cotton in between the wool.
But if someone really wants to make them, you could probably draw them a little sketch or a little
Right.
pattern or something.
Anyway, that's all they're
Right.
made of.
In other words, it's possible to use big, thick towels, but sometimes you can only leave them on maybe 2 minutes or so before they begin losing the heat. And although you can wrap them up pretty good and get an effect, you just have to be a little careful because they don't retain their heat quite as long. And then another girl last night did it another way. Now she'd have this pad like this, and she dampened it down and laid it into this, this is about a 10 by 16 inch cookie pan with 1 inch sides on it. And so she laid the moist pad right in the cookie pan and put another cookie pan right over the top of it. So the pad is in there just like a piece of cheese between two slices of bread. And then she just sticks it right in the oven. Put it in the oven, and just so it's moist in there, as long as the pad's moist. And actually, you put the top over it. You put another cookie tin over the top of the one that was at the bottom to hold the moisture. See, if you didn't have that one on top, then the moisture from the pad would just evaporate right out into the oven. Just leave it in there 5-6 minutes in an oven, maybe 350 degrees. I think she said 350.
That sounds to me like that's the easiest.
That probably is the easiest. And
Except how would you do them fast enough?
Well,
That's what I was thinking.
you'd
How
have.
could you keep
Well, here's the thing. Now,
nothing?
remember, you always like to. It's best to give fomentations by twos. In other words, have somebody helping you. So here's this one. Now, this is your first one. You take it out of the oven, and you can take it right into just with a pair of hot pads. Take it right into the bedroom wherever you're working, and get all set. Get the patient all set, and flip the cookie pan, which is serving as a lid. Flip it right off. Take it out. Lay it on the towel. If you got a towel on the patient's chest, lay it right on there and cover this over with another towel. In the meantime, you've got another pad that is laid in here, moistened and everything. Stick it right in the oven. She claims it only takes 3 or 4 minutes, but I think you'd want to have 2 pads going, or 2 of these cookie things going. 2 units, you might say, going. So that's as soon as you pull that one out of the oven, well, you could have the second one in there already to begin with. So as soon as this first one now begins to cool off, they take the other one out of the oven and get it ready. And remember now, as soon as this first one comes off the chest, it can go right back into the spare cookie thing and back in the oven, because you still got about a minute to go on the ice, plus another 3 minutes for that.
You know, at Myers 50 Acres, they have these cake pans, 2 inches with the cover on it. You can transport a cake.
Yeah,
It's a
that'd be-
sliding cover. It's a little deeper.
Right.
Well, that would be-
If it's deeper and you get 2 pads in
It's
there.
about 2.5
right.
inches, you know.
Yeah, get 2 pads in there,
It's
and
got
then
a sliding cover,
Cover,
on it, you know,
right.
for transporting a cake. That's what
That's
they're
right.
for.
The only thing is, it's hard to get the cover off when it's hot. I tried it once and burned my hand.
Well, you'd have
Well,
to use.
You still have to use a
pads.
bulky thing to get it open. I mean,
put a little oil on the sides of it and make it slide easier. I don't know, but anyway. So that's 3 real good ways. You could probably come up with other ways. It's the main thing is get a moist pad into some kind of container, either into a container that's boiling, that has boiling water in the bottom, or else into some container you can put in the oven for. We'll stick it in the oven for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, how long it takes. Now, this is a hot pad? This is electric skillet. Okay. Now, like I say, one of the good things to do is to make people sweat. You know, in the Bible, this is the first hydrotherapy treatment in the Bible. Man shall live by the sweat of his brow, Genesis 3, verse 18. And there's nothing like sweating to get rid of the impurities through the thousands and thousands of little sewers you have all over your body. That's what your sweat glands are, little sewers to get rid of impurities. So the best way is just to get into a sweaty condition. Now, it'd be nice to bundle up in the summertime and go out and work in the garden, or put a plastic suit on and go out and work in the warm weather. Out in the sun, you'll really sweat that way, but of course sometimes, like this time of year, why it's hard to work up a good sweat. So maybe you need a little home sauna. Of course, if you go down and buy a redwood one with all the sauna unit and everything, you might have $700, $800, maybe $1,000 in it. And who's got $1,000 to put a sauna unit in their home? So let's try to demonstrate kind of quickly here how we can produce a little sauna. Now, you got wooden chairs here. Normally, you wouldn't use a good dining room wooden chair.
This is the end of side 1. Please turn your tape over for the remainder of the message.
Those quart bottles.
About how much
Gallon.
do you mean by a lot?
All right. Now, what do you mean on the olive oil? Well, the olive oil, I would take instead of 3 or 4 ounces of milk every 3 or 4 hours, I'd take maybe a level tablespoon of olive oil maybe every 4 hours, and then olive oil gel, 1 or 2 ounces of gel maybe every 5 hours or so. Like morning, drink a little 3-ounce jigger, and then in the noontime, a little 3 or 4 ounce thing.
It's not too tasty, is it?
No, it's not too tasty, but I don't think it's that bad, really. Here again, you can always hold your nose when you drink it.
Why does that work? I don't understand. Just to soothe
It's
it?
a
Well, it's a very jelly-like substance. Now, I know in comfrey, you see in your skin you have a thing called anatrophen. It's a very distinct chemical in your skin called anatrophen. And I'm going to tell you, this is really fascinating because comfrey leaves, now I'm getting off of aloe vera gel, I'm getting into a cousin of aloe vera, I guess. Comfrey, it's not really a cousin, but anyway, let me tell you this, maybe this will explain why aloe vera gel is so soothing. Comfrey, if you grind up fresh comfrey leaves and put on a bad bruise or a real gougy looking condition of the skin, I mean where something is eaten right into the skin, if you just pulverize up some of these fresh comfrey leaves and put right on there, and do that maybe 2 applications a day, after about a week's time, you'll have just fresh baby pink skin. There was a man down in Oak Haven that had jungle rot. I mean, it was just something that just eaten right into the muscles of his calf. And it was just hideous. It was weeping and blood oozing and pus and everything. And we just did that twice a day with ground up pulverized comfrey leaves. And sure enough, after about the 8th day, it looks just like baby's pink skin there, where it began to heal right over.
Is that the man that Jim Risk was telling me about?
This is what all this acts out, you see. Now that's what happened essentially on the Day of Atonement, or when they had the cleansing of the earthly sanctuary. But somebody says, Pastor, I still don't understand what the big point is. Well, now I come to that. Turn to Leviticus chapter 23, and this is it. Leviticus, the 23rd chapter. That's page, the part I want you to look at is on page 94 in your Old Testament. Now, I have described just some of the highlights, at least the basic, the most important things, in my opinion, as far as the service of the yearly cleansing of the earthly sanctuary involving the goats and this type of thing. But you know as well as I, folks, and again, I wanted to say this reverently, goats are not being escorted around in heaven. So what's the big point? What's the fundamental idea? That's what we need now. Illustrated by the goat ceremony, or the ceremony of the Day of Atonement, so to speak. That's what we're after now. What's the big idea in the whole thing? And here it is, Leviticus 23, and watch these words carefully, beginning with verse 26. This is it, and this is what we've been heading for all night, almost. Here it is, Leviticus 23, and beginning now with verse 26. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Also, on the 10th day of this 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement. That's it, the Day of Atonement, when they had the cleansing of the sanctuary. It shall be a holy convocation unto you, and you shall afflict your souls. Don't miss that little clause. Ye shall afflict your souls, and offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord.
Yeah, we'll use a plastic.
Oh, that thing that I got.
If you had a metal chair, it'd be all right. If you have a metal chair, though, put a towel between the patient and the metal. because as the steam comes up under the chair, it gets the metal hot, and then their back or where they're sitting down becomes a little hot. So let's see. We just set that here. What's your name?
Randy.
Randy? Randy, why don't you just sit up there? We're not gonna have steam going, so you won't have to sweat. We'll just set Randy up here. Now normally, of course, I'd be sitting on the chair, not up there on a table. Okay, then you just stick your hot plate right under the chair. And of course, you'd have 4 or 5 inches of water in the hot plate. And actually, I don't have a cord here because we're not going to.
Skillet.
Electric skillet, yeah. And it's electric skillet, but we don't have the cord, and we're not going to plug it in because we don't want to take the time to get the steam going. But you can easily see with a good electric skillet, and 3 or 4 inches of water in the bottom, that pretty soon it would be boiling, steaming well. Now, of course, the steam would just fly out all over into the room. So what we got to do, we got to contain that steam right around the patient. You know, put a plastic bag around it? Well, you know, you could wrap a piece of plastic around, but if you don't have that, just take a blanket and just... Actually, let me get this bigger quilt material here. I think it's a little bigger. Maybe we can wrap the quilt. You need about 3 blankets, really, I think, to do a good, thorough job. We have 2 here. Let's see what we can do. Now, Randy, we'll just put you right around like this. Kind of tent style. You see, you just drape it around him so he's sitting there like an Indian, all wrapped in a blanket. You just cover up his whole body. Just let the blanket kind of drape down on the floor all around him. And you could have a little cold rag on his head. Then over the cold rag, just put another blanket, kind of like this. In other words, you double drape him. Once you get the one blanket wrapped all around from the neck down, all around him, then put the other one up over his head, like the squaw would, or the Indian woman would wear, right up over her head and down the sides, and kind of folded here in front of him. So he's actually almost wrapped double in 2 blankets.
Maybe if you put a sheet on first too, it would keep the
Well, a
blankets
sheet.
cleaner too.
The what?
If they're going to sweat into the blanket.
Yeah, if they're going to sweat into the blankets, maybe you ought to have a sheet that you can wash after he gets done, because he's really going to sweat. And of course, in the meantime, here's this water. This water is boiling and steaming underneath him, and it can't escape because of the blankets and the sheets, and maybe a piece of black plastic. If you've got a big piece of black plastic, wrap that around him. But of course, leave his face exposed so he can breathe, and so he doesn't get claustrophobia. And like I say, believe me, this really begins to steam up under here. And in fact, you might even want to cut down the control if you've got one of these electric skillets where it's got medium, low, high, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 settings on it. You might want to have to cut it down to setting number 4 or 5 because it really began to steam. Now, another thing, too, you could have his feet sitting in hot water. But just be careful that you don't drape the blanket, the edges of the blanket in the pan of hot water because that can get kind of a soggy mess. It begins to creep up the blanket up to his knees. And then, like I said, kind of keep his head cool. And he's going to sweat just as much as he does in a $1,000 sauna. And that's a real effective way. Now, another thing you can do, if you don't have an electric skillet, and a lot of people don't, but if you have some kind of a hot plate, stick the hot plate under the stool or the chair. And by the way, this will work real good with the stool, too. Stick the hot plate right under the stool or the chair in place of the electric skillet. And, of course, on the hot plate now, you've got to put some kind of a pan, a big saucepan, maybe 12 inches in diameter and 6 inches high. Fill that full of water, half full of water. And wait till it gets boiling. Huh?
Be careful your blankets don't catch on.
Yeah, well, usually they're pretty. If your chair is fairly big around with legs on it, sorry. It's got
What
quite a
would you
bit.
use that for now?
Just to make a patient really perspire. I mean, they get really sweating good. And then after they come out of that, why, if it was me, I would, I'd
Jump into a cold
shower.
cold shower. No, actually, I would take them in the bathroom and give them a salt glow. That's where you've got a bowl of damp salt. You just take a big bowl of salt and dampen it down. Don't make it soupy, but just make it kind of cakey, like the sand that they use to build sand castles out of. Just scoop that up in your hands or wrap a washcloth around your hand, you know, real tight, and then dip down in that salt and just take that salt and just scrub all over. Arms, back, legs, sides. Just scrub them all over with that salt. and really make them glow. And that salt for one, cleanses out all the pores of the body. And also the salt is an abrasive action. And whatever abrasive action you have on your surface of your body, on your skin, you have the same kind of a stimulation directly under the skin in the organs like the liver, the pancreas, the kidneys, and so forth. Then after the salt, because they got all that sweat on them, they got all that cakey salt all over them, then put them in a warm shower for 3 or 4 minutes, let them wash it all off. But then don't let them get out of the warm shower until you've turned off the warm and turned the cold on full blast for about 20 or 30 seconds. About 20 or 30 would be good. And that would really give them a good...
Long.
Would it sound better 2 or 3 seconds? Well, you can just jump around. You don't have to have it all that time on one side, you see. You
Yeah, I know.
you can keep turning around and jumping around. Well, I better get this off of Randy.
Salt blow under the arms.
Well, you could, lightly. Don't do it anywhere where it's going to really irritate or cause you pain. Yeah, we'll unwrap Randy. He'll start sweating even without the hot water on him. If you had a piece of plastic, too, that would be nice to put around them when they're on this chair with that heat under it, because that plastic will really hold the heat in, too, and make you sweat terrible. I mean, real good, not terrible. Well, that's a real simple home sauna, which is really good and effective. And I went over the fomentations. And I don't know, maybe if anyone has any questions here.
If you were going to clear it out a little bit, is that too big of a task?
It's almost, really, it's too big. If someone wants to learn about iridology, why, they can get some good books. That's to study the eyes.
What's the best given?
No, well, Jensen's got one out for $13 and one for $18, but I don't know. That's really getting into it pretty deep. But I don't really use iridology. That's, you know, a German back about 100 years ago discovered this eagle over in Germany with a broken wing, a right wing, and he felt so sorry for it, he took it in and nursed it. And he noticed on the right eye at a certain location, because an eagle has such big, outstanding eyes to begin with, in the iris, he noticed this big black spot with a little blood around it in the right eye. And as the wing of this eagle healed, he nursed it back to health, that spot disappeared in the eye, and that began to get him wondering. And then he found another bird who had a broken left one, and that left one showed up on the left eye almost opposite. Well, anyway, he made a lifelong study of studying different animals. He began to be like a nursemaid to all these sick and maimed animals. And through the process of a little chart, he could actually tell where the spots would show up in the eyes according to what was broken or what organ was diseased in the animal. And I can do it if I have an eye chart. In other words, for instance, this girl back at Lifeline named Jan, she said, "Look at my eyes." So I did. And about at 2 o'clock in the left eye, I saw this real bad-looking black spot. And I said, "Well, I see one good black spot there in your left eye, Jan." But I said, "That's actually," I said, "as far as I can remember by the eye chart," I said, "that's right around the nose area." Well, she said, "That's it." She said, "I was in a big fight in a bar down in Brooklyn." She you'd have to meet Jan to know her. But she said, 3 years ago, I was in a kind of a brawl in a bar in Brooklyn, and I got my nose broken in 3 places. And it was just a mess, she said, for about 3 months. Well, I said, I guess that answers that question for me. I like to have fun just looking at someone's eye to tell whether they've been on drugs. Of course, I don't broadcast it around. But if I know the person pretty well, know their personality, and I know that it will not embarrass them or something like that, and they've been on drugs. Of course, a lot of times, you see, if you've been on drugs and you've gone off drugs, it'll still show up for 2, 3, 4 years, unless you go on a real cleansing program, and then it'll disappear much quicker. But you can always tell a person that's been on drugs because they'll have an orange ring right around the pupil in the iris of the eye. The orange ring will not quite touch the pupil. You'll have the pupil, the black pupil, and then you have a little old 32nd of an inch of the iris showing, and then the orange ring will start around that. And it'll be an orange ring, and the deeper and wider the orange ring, the more intense the drug medication program has been in their life. But now this can get confused with the brown ring. You'll also, if you've got pollution in the body, and most people have a brown ring around the pupil of their eye, in the iris, in the same location that the drug ring is in. The only difference now, what I tell you about the drug ring, it does not touch the pupil. There's always that little space between the pupil and where the drug ring starts. But the brown, the pollution ring, always starts right against the pupil of the eye. And it just, the bigger it is, the more dense, the more pollution you have in your body. And this runs real consistent. And anybody that's on a good cleansing program, that brown ring will just about disappear down to nothing. And also, if you got a lot of acid in your system, do you ever see a person with blue eyes, but they're kind of cloudy, white cloudy? Well, that's a little bit of an acid condition. And if you can clear up that acid condition in your body, your eyes will become real nice and blue, like a nice blue lake or something. So, but that's about the only dealings I go into with the eye, really. Because on the treatment program we have, we use the same cleansing program for every disease. Because I've never found any disease that did not succumb to the cleansing program of cleansing the blood and restoring the circulation. Now, some programs vary slightly. For instance, if someone was a diabetic, you'd concentrate on putting a fomentation over the pancreas area to stimulate the pancreas to produce insulin. Where if they had multiple sclerosis or muscular dystrophy, naturally you wouldn't necessarily put a fomentation on their pancreas. But this is just a little side thing you do in addition to the regular 6-day cleansing program. And of course, 6-day cleansing, that doesn't mean 6 days you're going to be completely healed and that's it. You might have to repeat it the second, third week, or 2 weeks out of a month for maybe 2 or 3 months in a real severe case. It's just like in the Bible. In Leviticus, the 13th, 14th, and 15th chapters, if someone had a disease, why they came to the priest after 7 days. They were shut up for 7 days. They came to the priest at the end of 7 days. If he saw that the disease, the symptoms had been either arrested or vanished, naturally he was pronounced cured. But if he wasn't cured, then they shut him up again. Now, I don't know what they did when they shut him up, but it says that he'd be shut up again for another 7 days, and then come out at the end of the 14th day, and they'd go through the same process again. If he still wasn't healed, they'd shut him up again for another 7 days and bring him out at the end of 21 days. So you just got to be patient and take time on these things.
Would the cleansing heal leprosy or something like that?
Oh, definitely. And you know that leprosy, basically, I've read up 2 or 3 accounts, and I believe them pretty well, that leprosy, of course, is a warm, hot climate disease over in Africa, and it's very prevalent amongst people who eat pork. Pig, whether it's tame pig or wild boars or what it is. And you take the person off the pig, and their chances of leprosy, even in a good hot climate, is greatly reduced. And then you take them out of the good hot climate and off the pig too, and then you just don't get leprosy in the temperate zones. Right.
Yeah. Backing up on the fomentations, I was thinking they were talking about the covers on the pans and things. If you didn't have that, you could just cover it good with tinfoil.
Yeah.
Would hold the heat in.
Right. And that gives me another idea. I hadn't thought of it. No one's brought it up. What would happen if you took a wet or a damp fomentation pad and wrapped it in tin foil and put it in the oven? That would probably work too. Take them out and just pull out this one and unwrap it by the patient. Yeah, that would work. See, that's why I say there's so many ways you could experiment. It's so simple, and it's just so tremendously effective. Really.
I have a question I'd like to, I don't know whether you know anything about it, but a friend of mine is blind because he has no tears.
No tears, huh?
This happened within the last couple, 3 years. He's been to Mayo Brothers, and I don't know at all, and they haven't been able to do anything for him. He can see all right. He can't keep his eyes open because it hurts his eyes.
Yeah, I'd like to experiment with onion drops and a lot of onions and things to see if something could open up those tear ducts. He's either got obstructions in the tear ducts, or somehow there's blockage going into the little bulbs that produce the fluid there.
Sounds like that's what we do.
Unless he was just severely dehydrated, which I don't think he is, or would be. So
No, he drinks like a fish. He used to.
I mean, there can only be 2 causes. Either the
Yeah, he used to do a lot of drinking, and I guess he quit and he went back on it.
well, you either got to get the stimulation going to produce the fluid there, or else the fluid's being produced, but it's not getting through the tear ducts. So it could be an experiment with. I think pretty easy.
And what about those people that don't sweat?
All right. Well, basically, Carol, if you ever worked in a hospital and worked around, say, a cancer patient, someone dying of cancer, just examine their skin sometime, or just look at it. It'll be very thick, like an elephant's almost. And basically speaking, the thicker your skin, the more impurities that are in that skin. Now, of course, women have a little subcutaneous layer of fat that nature put there. So naturally, women's skin will be a little thicker to begin with, just normally speaking. But you take some man that has a real good thin skin and is in real good health, why his veins, of course, will stand out very well. I'm not bragging, but I guess you can see they do.
Well, I remember hearing of this lady that would, she'd faint, and even in the hot summer, she couldn't sweat. She
No.
went to doctors and all. And
You said she fainted. That's probably why she did faint there. She wasn't getting rid of the impurities through the skin. Someone who is sick, too, we've noticed, on the sweat circulation bath. Why, or they put them in a sauna, or even a home sauna. You may not get good response the first day, but don't give up. Try it the second day. They'll begin to sweat a little bit more. And the third day, they'll sweat even more. But another thing, I forgot to mention, what I mentioned in the past classes when we went into the sweating, the sweat bath and so forth. If you're going to get somebody a sauna, a home sauna like this, do you remember from a past class, one thing you should give them before you give them the sauna or the sweat and circulation bath? The what? Go ahead, say it. I heard it under somebody's breath. What did you say? Tea, right. And what kind of tea? Blood purifier or nervine? A nervine. Something like peppermint, which is kind of mild, or catnip. Give them a catnip, nice cup of catnip. Because when they drink the nervine tea, it relaxes the nerves, which in turn relaxes the muscles. And what are all the sweat glands surrounded by? A little ring of muscle. And when you get real cold and shiver, that little muscle constricts and puckers up, and you get a little goose pimple. But you don't want that puckering up. You want it to flatten back down and open up. And that's what it does. You drink that nervine tea, and that little ring of muscle around the sweat gland just flattens right out and opens right up, and you just sweat real good. So, yes.
I would like to give you an experience I had in New York City. I was at a company called us in. We had a seminar for a week, and I got on a Wednesday, a migraine headache. And one of my friends in the home office took me to Riley, a health institute, which is a physical education institute. And I had one of these saunas, a regular sauna, and then a salt rub down. And this man that did this was a Swedish masseur.
Yeah.
But you better be ready to go to bed, because 15 minutes afterwards you're out. If it's done right, you are so relaxed.
Yeah.
This friend of mine took me from this place back to the Waldorf Hotel where we were, and I went to bed, and I slept from 4 in the afternoon until the next morning at 7 o'clock.
Right. Yeah, you missed the class, about the third or fourth class. We went into the complete body massage and the back massage, and I told people that when I worked in a hospital, I used to love to go into the room and put somebody to sleep without giving them the sleeping pill. This is before I was really convicted on getting away from sleeping pills and drugs and that kind of routine and the natural treatments. And when I demonstrated that night, I had a boy, a 13-year-old boy by the name of Lane, it was Lane Scott, and he was here on the table and we were giving the demonstration, and for a few times there he got real relaxed there, and he told us he could just about fall asleep, even with an audience here and everything, if it's done right. You mentioned you mentioned a migraine headache, of course. A migraine headache is caused by too much tension in the neck area. And if you can just really relax the neck and work it over and relax it, why, it'll relieve that migraine headache, because what's happening is your heart is pumping blood up through that tense neck, because the pump action of the heart is forcing that blood through the tense neck muscles and constricted veins into the head. But the problem is, once it gets up in the head, you don't have a pump up here in the head to pump it back down. Gravity will take some of it back down, but it won't take all of it. So therefore, you continue to get a build-up or a congestion of blood up in the head. That puts pressure on your nerves, and you just get a real bad headache. So what you got to do is open up or loosen up the neck and let the blood, let just as much blood come down out of the head that's being pumped up in it. It equalizes. That's one of our rules there, perfect circulation. And
They're terrible, those migraines. Unfortunately, I don't have them anymore. But
good.
I was under a lot of pressure for a number of years. And
Right.
They could be rough.
That's right. Another thing, too, if you get a good back massage, the lower back sympathizes with the upper back or the neck area. And anyone that's got a real tense, sore neck will also have a tension down in the lower back area. So you can work the lower back and actually help the neck. Any other questions? I feel we've covered...
Putting a cold rag
Pardon?
on a hot head.
Cold rag?
Yeah.
Well, that would help. If you was giving somebody a neck massage and back massage, and they had a real bad headache or something, sure, you could put a cold on there. You might want to put your feet, too, in hot water. That would tend to draw, too, away from the head. Yeah, that's all right. You always want to keep as they say, you always want to keep cool, you know. Stay cool now, stay calm. Keep your head cool. Yeah. Always want to keep your feet warm and your brains or your head cool under all conditions.
Are you throwing this open for questions?
More or less, yeah. But this was just kind of a fill-in class
I'd
anyway.
like to ask a question. My oldest son came over to the house this week, 37 years old, and he just got through taking a lot of tests, and the doctors informed him that he's got a gout condition. And so I think it was the day that I talked to you on the phone, was it, or did I no, I guess not. But anyway, I looked in a couple of textbooks I had, and as to what could be suggested or what he could take. Most of them said about pantothenic acid. And I was wondering if you had any ideas or suggestions.
Yeah. Now, what actually gout is a very general, loose term. What exactly is his main symptom? You say gout.
Well, I don't think he particularly had any symptom of any kind. He has some high blood pressure. He's had it for several years. He's a truck driver, and he is due to have his annual physical, and he was a little worried about it. So he went to the doctor to have his blood pressure checked, and in so doing, the doctor ordered up to the hospital to have some blood tests and an EKG, and I forget what else. But anyway, they found, as a result of the blood test, that he's got a gout condition. And so they put him on a diet, and I looked at the diet sheet the doctor gave him. And I'm not a doctor, however, I was in the dental school for a year and a half before I had to drop out many years ago, and I took quite a few courses in which I questioned the diet sheet. I didn't tell him this. This is just between you and I and the gatepost, but I just questioned the diet that they put him on.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if you had any experience or any...
Well, number one, to go back to about the second class we had here, we discovered that back in about the second class from the Bible that there are 5 areas of the body to be cleansed on the cleansing program. If you recall what they were, the most important, no doubt, is the colon area. You find this, well, I'll have to go over it. Maybe Pat can teach this to you sometime on the side. But anyway, it's the colon and the skin. These are 2 primal, I should say, very important areas to cleanse. The colon and the skin. And then a good third one would be the liver. A fourth one would be the kidneys. And the fifth one would be the lymph centers, or the lymph system. The lymph centers, you got 2 of them under each arm, and 2 of them in the groin area. You have minor lymph centers in the sides of the neck, and a few in the elbow and a few in the knees, but mainly in the groin area and under the arms. Now, if any one of these 5 get kind of functioning, you know, kind of not too good, maybe only functioning about 50%, 60% level, then you're going to start having a backup or a backlog of impurities in the system, in the blood, in the cells. Your liver, if it begins to shut down a little bit, you're going to have a lot of toxins building up in the body. And this all produces a bad environment. Wherever you've got a bad environment in your body, the cells are going to begin to atrophy and shrivel up. They won't die like science says in multiple sclerosis. They don't die on the myelin sheath. Some of them may die, just like your bums die on Madison Avenue or Bowery. But a lot of them are just shriveled up. They're just part of the living dead, you know, of humanity. Well, your cells, you got a lot of cells that are just living dead. They could be alive again and functioning well, but they're just kind of all atrophied and shriveled up. So if you clean up the whole system, get the environment all cleaned up nice, then those cells begin to thrive again. They begin to fill out and become healthy. Whether they're muscle cells, well, that's why you can get rid of muscular dystrophy. And anybody says that muscular dystrophy is an incurable disease, it's not. Believe me. But you talking about the son or son-in-law that's a truck driver?
My son.
Okay. If he's a truck driver, he's got a real problem to begin with. Because I know, I haven't driven a truck that much, but I know when you're on the road constantly, day after day, even if you may have a day off every 3rd or 4th day, you're on the road so much, you're sitting there in the cab, just sitting there, and you're eating pretty good, you're stopping at the truck stops and everything, but you don't get that exercise, you don't get that massaging, that natural exercise to the colon area, to the abdominal muscles, and therefore you have a tendency to have constipation. The truck drivers that do not suffer at all from constipation are very few and far between. And constipation is a big problem. In fact, cancer of the colon area in the intestinal tract is the #1 cancer killer in this country today. Jack Benny, you know, he died of basically colon cancer. Stomach, it was part stomach too. It's just becoming very prevalent. And it's mainly because of constipation. And then number two, what does he drive? One of these big trucks?
Yes.
The big ones, yeah. They tend to have a little bound. They don't ride like a Cadillac or a big Oldsmobile. And you get this continually jarring, even though they might think it's pretty comfortable, but it doesn't ride like a Cadillac or a big Oldsmobile. And it's continually jarring like that on the kidneys. It produces enough trauma there, enough irritation, that the kidneys begin to get all tightened and tensed up, and you don't get good function of the kidneys. Therefore, you don't get good filtering of the blood. And I suppose even the liver will take a little bit of a jarring, and that disturbs the functioning. It's just like a guy keeps hitting himself in the head all the time. This doesn't hurt, but if you do it all day long, pretty soon you might get a headache and things like this. It does set up a trauma there after a while. He may not drink enough water because he's probably in an air-conditioned cab and he doesn't sweat much. And there's probably quite a few things. But whatever condition he has, I guarantee that on a good cleansing program, in 1 to 2 weeks, he'd get rid of whatever gout is. Gout's a very general term.
Is there any textbook that a person can buy and reading on this cleansing program?
Well, I'm going to give you the basic program. You might have to ask a few questions. Ask Pat a few questions.
The doctor book calls gout a form of arthritis.
Pardon?
I said the doctor book calls gout a form of arthritis.
Yeah. Well, okay. That's a lot of impurities.
This is a different kind
Yeah.
too.
Well, yeah, that's gathering of impurities in the joints and inflammation of the joints and so forth.
But it's the first time I ever heard it in such a young man, or a young person, 36 years old.
Well, that's happening. They're getting younger and younger nowadays
Yeah.
because of the diet conditions and the lack of exercise and so forth. Just like Pat's adopted girl there, she went on the 6-day cleansing program to do something about these inflamed tonsils. At the end of the 6 days, the tonsils not only went down, but the acne problem, which she'd had for, I guess, months or years, went away.
She also sweated for maybe the first time.
First time she sweated. Yeah, getting rid of all the impurities.
She never could sweat. She never
Right.
sweated.
So if you've got a lot of symptoms, you see, you get rid of a lot of symptoms, but that's just a byproduct when you treat somebody for tonsils and get rid of their acne. But that's getting down the cause, you see. Otherwise, you can treat symptoms for years after years, but why not just get the cause? And when you get the cause,
It's a little bit funny. It isn't. I shouldn't put it that way. I'm not expressing it, but it is funny to me because, he is one of my children who always sort of made fun of the old man and on nutrition and health foods and
right.
through the years. And I got started on this many years ago, 1959. But now, oh boy, he's really digging into all of my stuff that I got.
Yeah.
What can I take, Dad? And what have you got in your vitamins that I could have?
You take a lot for granted, and then when you begin to losing something that's valuable, when you begin to
Right.
lose it, then you,
Right.
then you.
Right. So I
search around.
gotta convert him, see, and I just
Yeah.
wondered what.
Yeah, listen, I want to get these. I got a feeling the last line didn't come off on the Xerox machine, so I got a pencil or someone's got a pen here.
I don't think any of those are good because I will turn
Yeah,
mine
I'll write in the
into
last
an
line. But this is just a sample 6-day cleansing program that we use out at Oakhaven. Like I say, I don't know how much good you can get out of it because all the treatments are very simple, by the way. But you only get out of something what you put into it anyway. See, that's one thing. But it's all pretty self-explanatory. And if you had any questions on it, why, Pat can always answer. She's been through it.
Do you want some help with them?
No, well, I don't think you could read that last line enough.
Okay, do
to
one
finish.
and I'll.
Okay. But if you got any other questions, just answer them. Otherwise, I know we started kind of late, so I don't want to keep you too late. And the Lord willing, real soon I'll try to have that book out. It's going to be real simple and real. We'll try to have it really well illustrated. In fact, I've got an artist that wants to do illustrations. And it's the last thing in the world I want to do is put out a book. I'd rather climb Mount McKinley, but there's been a pretty good real demand for it, really. So
Good.
I thought, well.
You gotta let people know when it's ready, or?
We'll
Right,
have it here.
right. I'll have Pat. She can be my first outlet. Yeah. But it'll cover the cleansing program and, well, I don't know just what all. It'll be about 8 or 10 chapters. It won't be big and thick and complicated, but I know it'll be helpful.
Where's this place? Okay.
Okay, then, yeah. Well, Pat can give you the directions. Down at Pullman. If you can find Pullman, we're just 3 miles east of there, and it's 1,200 acres. This is where we all live.
Down near Benton Harbor.
No. This side of South Haven.
Oh, halfway down.
Oh,
It's 75 miles from here down there to Oak
Yeah. If you get down to South Haven, you're going too far south.
I see.
Go to Pullman, and we just have open. We have 1,200 acres there. We have a little cereal factory, sawmill, printing press, and of course we got a lot of good young people that are seeking a better way of life, being led by the Lord. We give all natural treatments, and it's just tremendous, and we never make any charges. If you want to come for a weekend or stay for a week, and we don't charge a dime. It's just donation basis type of thing if someone wants to donate. And you're welcome anytime. It's just Oak Haven, Pullman, Michigan. In fact, that's our mailing address. Oak Haven, Pullman, Michigan. That's the only address you need. That's the only thing you need up in your mind to find it. Just if you find Pullman, just ask somebody in Pullman, and I'll tell you right where Oak Haven is. We have a beautiful 1,200 acres there with some houses there. You have to drive back about a mile through the woods, and all of a sudden it opens up into the opening there, where the house is and the little lodge like is.
Keep going until you run into a building. That's it.
And you see a lot of young people around, and just tremendous, fine young people. Just clean cut, nice looking young
It is
people.
3 miles east of,
Pullman, right?
I know it's quite a little.
Ed, can you drink too much?
Not
I
water.
mean, is it, the fullness you feel after you
Yeah, but that passes out of your
drunk a
stomach.
lot
Yeah.
of liquid?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't try to drink a whole gallon or half a gallon at one setting. But I mean during the day, no.
That's what I was wondering. Could you do harm?
Well, don't run it into your
force
meals. You don't drink with your meals, and don't drink
No.
for an hour and a half after. I don't know. I read a good article on the jiu-jitsu artists over in Japan and these wrestlers. Of course, this was written quite a few years ago, but they had tremendous stamina and tremendous skill, tremendous strength, and they always tried to drink at least 1 gallon of water a day, and they attribute that to their strength, keeping the system all flushed out, cleansed out. A person drinking that much would tend to sweat a lot too, and it would. Well, of course, you don't want to overdo anything. I mean, if you're trying to drink 2 gallons or 3 a day or something, what are you trying to prove? You're the limit.
Sometimes those 2 in the morning seem like I'm forcing them. The first one's easy.
Glass, you mean?
2 glasses in the morning.
Right. The
Yep.
first one is easy. The second one, sometimes you,
You feel kind of sick to your stomach. I feel sick in my stomach after I drink all that much water.
Well, I guess, Pat, that's probably about it on the tape there.